Hey, what's up everybody? It's Kellen here from Start Your Systems again, and today I'm going to be playing the Thunder Valley National, at least the 2017 version of the Thunder Valley National. I know this video is going to be called 2018 Thunder Valley, but it's a little bit different than this year's Thunder Valley, so I'm kind of playing it after reviewing the National a little bit. I know you guys have talked about wanting to see me talk about the races again a little bit, and I know I haven't been doing the first couple rounds. Been a little bit hectic. I will be getting married in 2 days when this video is released, so it's 3 days from now right now, and I've just had way too much stuff going on, so I'm trying to get ahead on videos. This is part of that process, and what I'm going to do in this video basically is ride the track. A road is on 10, so I'll probably ride for like 20 minutes. You'll see the track weather in a little bit. It'll probably go 7-8 laps, and I'm going to talk about some of my thoughts on the Nationals as they have been so far, 3 rounds deep, and then obviously I'm going to be on my honeymoon come High Point, so I won't be able to do like a preview video of that round either, so this is kind of going to synopsize all of that, like 3 rounds in, what I'm going to expect for the next round, which is basically 2 weeks from now, and so on and so forth. So let's dive in, shall we? This is, like I said, it's the 2017 version of the Thunder Valley National because that's what the track crews in MX Simulator build the tracks off of. We race the Pro Series in MX Simulator on the Wednesday prior to every Pro National in real life, so can't really expect to know exactly what the track's going to look like when you're building the track 2 months prior to the track actually being raced. So that's why they go off the 2017 version for the outdoors. But the track actually isn't terribly different. It's mostly the same, like that little switchback before the mechanics area was a little bit different. I think this was actually just a tabletop this year instead of a triple, but really not much was different on the track this year compared to the 2017 version. So it's essentially the 2018 version, just a couple nuanced differences, and so that's why I figured I'd point it out, so people won't say this isn't the 2018 version. It's just the track that got released in 2018 in Sim, basically off the 2017 version. But yeah, so Thunder Valley already ran in real life, so spoiler alert if I'm going to be ruining this for any of you guys. But I'm kind of going to summarize my thoughts and opinions on Hangtown, Glen Helen, and Thunder Valley, and then I'll sort of semi-preview High Point. But I don't know, I think this season so far, and I'll start off by talking the 450s a little bit, has not really gone the way I expected it would. Tomac is about as good as I expected him to be, so I'm not surprised by that. But in my opinion, I feel like Marvin Musquin is a little off. I'm not sure what it is and why it's been that way, but he just, like, you know, speed-wise, you know, overall longevity in motos, so on and so forth, is just not all there, and I'm not sure what that is exactly. I expected him to be a little bit better. Definitely expected, you know, not Roxon to be the guy that seems like he's going to be the one to take down Tomac. Maybe later in the season I would have expected that, but, you know, early on I really felt like Marvin, coming off of almost winning the Supercross title, being a part of that whole shebang, and carrying his momentum from Supercross into outdoors, that overall he'd be better. And Hangtown, he was good. He, you know, led for a little bit there in, I think, that second moto he led. Actually, both motos he led. And really gave Tomac some fits for a little bit. I think Tomac was biting his time a little bit and then got him and kind of took off. But Glen Helen, Marvin didn't look even kind of comfortable. He ran the fastest lap of the first moto, but he started with all those guys. Like, Roxon was leading early on, and him and Tomac started getting away. But Musquin was in 4th behind Anderson, and they all kind of just, like, settled in those paces. Like, I really kind of would have expected Marvin to surge ahead of Anderson, you know, and it did eventually, and then got to Roxon late in the moto. But I don't know, I expected him to stick with Tomac's pace a little bit more, because Tomac has been hot and cold at Glen Helen before. But Roxon just looked like suddenly on another level than he was at Hangtown, just kind of back in his old groove a little bit. Still clearly fitness-wise is lacking, but I was impressed because I felt like that's a good sign for the season going forward. Like, as we get deeper into the season, Roxon's health is going to slowly come back to him, and clearly enough, his speed is there because he can run with Tomac for half or more of the moto now. But then Marvin in the second moto at Glen Helen, Roczen went down, or had that issue early on, and Tomac was in 5th or 6th, I think, early, got around most people, and Anderson had already pulled out a pretty big lead by the time Tomac had gotten into 2nd, and Anderson continued to kind of pull away. Tomac was trying to catch him, and they all, they both gapped the rest of the field by a ton, including Marvin. Like, Marvin ended up 45 seconds back at Tomac at the finish line, which was really strange. And I know Marvin's not like the hugest fan of Glen Helen either, but almost nobody is, it seems. And Marvin won Glen Helen last year, and he's won it, as an MXGP rider before, so he knows that track at least well enough that I don't think he would fall that far off the pace. So it took me aback a little bit, and then obviously Tomac caught and passed Anderson late. Anderson, they were talking maybe about an issue of him frying the clutch, but then he kind of dispelled those rumors and said, nah, Tomac just caught me. So like I said, I was just so surprised by the Marvin situation, less so about Anderson. I kind of expected that out of him, to be honest. A little bit of the Supercross hangover. And then Roczen fought his way all the way back to 8th in that second moto, which was really impressive, but it also kind of shows the lack of depth in the field because he was also almost lapped in the second moto. So I had a couple question marks going into Thunder Valley this past weekend, and I felt like a couple of those questions got answered, but I still have a question mark next to Muscan. Like, I don't really kind of get it. Yes, he kind of caught fire late in the season last year, so maybe that's just what's going on here. Like, he's not all there on the bike just yet, and he's going to suddenly ramp it up as we move into the East Coast rounds, which is totally possible. But I don't know. I just, like I said, expected more out of him, and I expected a lot less out of Roczen, to be fair. So Roczen has really stepped up to the plate this outdoor season thus far, coming off that injury, having so little time on the bike coming into the season, to be able to lead as much of that first moto at Glen Helen as he did, and then again this past weekend in Colorado. He led overall. I think he led more total time than Tomac did at Colorado. I'm pretty sure Roczen held the lead for more than half of the second moto, and I know that they were like red flagged. So they like red flagged the first moto, and they were already 11 minutes in, so they had 19 left to go before the clock expired, and they restarted them at that point, and Roczen got the whole shot and led until 7-ish minutes to go, I believe it was. And for a little bit it looked like he might even pull off the moto win until Tomac kind of caught fire, as he usually does late in the moto, and was able to put the kibosh on that and take the win. And even Tomac, it was Tomac, I don't mean to sound like down on the guy, but it's not as impressive as it used to be when he does some of these things. Like, it's kind of the norm. Like, it's almost getting to the point where it was with Stewart too, where he would start behind Carmichael or Reed or anybody, you name it, and you would just kind of wait. You're just waiting for like that moment that he just like pulled the trigger, and for 2 laps he was the fastest rider on the planet, and he was going 3 seconds a lap faster than everybody. So like, super kudos to Tomac that he's able to do that. But like I said, not really surprised. Like, this is kind of the Tomac I expected to see outdoors thus far, and I think he's also being pretty smart about it too, because he knows Kenny doesn't have the 35 minutes in him to finish the races up like he wants to. So he kind of bides his time, waits for him to tire out a little bit, gets him, and then you can tell that the 3 motos that Roczen's been in the lead and coughed it up to Tomac, that he was like spent after it was over. Like, Tomac immediately gapped him by a few seconds within a lap, and then Roczen would like settle back into a pace and hold on to second these 2 motos at Thunder Valley this weekend. But I think Tomac's smart enough to realize, okay, I'm kind of battling a guy that's still kind of semi-injured here. His health isn't all there yet. I don't need to break my back to pass him early in the moto and try to get away, because the race will eventually come to me. So he's definitely kind of smartened up in that sense, because like my opinion, his problem in 2015 was he just wanted to destroy everybody so much that he just kept riding hard, and it eventually reached up and bit him on this very track. But now it seems like he's kind of smartened up a little bit. He's figured it out. He's not as aggressive throughout the entire moto. He still does those, 2 or 3 laps where you're just like, it's unreal. You can't understand how he's able to do some of the things that he does. But he limits it. He doesn't do it as often. He waits for the right time. So it's definitely a much more smarter, calm, and collected Tomac that we've seen this year. And of course, everybody's already starting the 24-0 talk, which, look, I'm not even close to on that bandwagon. I don't think that for 24 motos in a row, Tomac is not gonna run into some bad luck. I think speed-wise, there's a couple guys that are still close enough that if Tomac were to fall in the first corner, it would be a real ask to get him to still win the moto. And I wouldn't put it past it that Tomac has a fall in the first corner somewhere coming up. It's nature, everybody kind of has their moments here and there, and I'm not saying he's going to get hurt. I think he's probably going to go like 22-2 in terms of moto wins, but I can't jump on the perfect season bandwagon yet. So we'll see with that going forward. I definitely think that Roxon's going to kind of step his game up and kind of moving into a little bit of pre-high point talk for the 450 guys. This week off is really going to be helpful to Roxon, and he kind of alluded to that in the press conference and some post-race interviews that he did, that he can use this week to kind of get testing a little bit more. He hasn't done a whole lot of testing because it's really just been about riding into shape. So a lot of his testing has been testing the bike, but also putting in long motos on a bike he's not comfortable with, whereas this one he can kind of go more into nuanced testing with an extra week off, and then continue to kind of pound out his motos and get his fitness back there a little bit. So I think this is going to be really helpful for Roxon. I don't necessarily think it's going to be the super turning point. Like, I think we'll come back to high point and Tomac will still be better over the 35 minutes and eventually, catch and pass Roxon if Roxon's leading the race. I think if Tomac starts within the top 5, it's still going to be the case where Roxon's not going to be able to hold on towards the end. But if, a case presents itself where Tomac starts outside of the top 10, it takes him too long to get there into second or third or wherever, and Roxon's leading and is gapped the field by 10 or so seconds. I mean, yeah, we saw it with Anderson, but I think Roxon's just a little bit of a different animal. I think he's a little bit better than Anderson at saving energy as well. Like, Anderson's kind of got that wild out there style where Roxon looks like he rides a little bit smoother. So I think that if it's going to be anybody right now to end the perfect season, it's going to be Roxon, just because he's already kind of there. Like, speed-wise, he knows what it takes to run and then maybe beat Tomac. His fitness is just not quite there yet, and I think once it comes around, it's only going to be, like one little nuanced kind of like lucky thing maybe to happen where Tomac gets a bad start or even has a fall that, Roxon will have enough time to gap him and not have to worry about catching him late. But that also might set up some interesting scenarios where Tomac, wanting to maybe even keep the perfect season alive, is just going all out to the finish line, trying to get to Roxon, and then maybe is doing like 4 or 5 second lap faster times. So that part in itself is kind of making it really interesting to watch what's going to happen, because if Tomac is already starting to think like, well, I can't let this moto go, because what if the perfect season becomes a possibility? He's, like I said, being smarter about it, not wanting to crash out of the season, but he also talked about how comfortable he was at Glen Helen with pushing the pace late in the moto and doing those lap times that he was doing over Anderson. So you never really know. Like, Tomac could just find that comfort zone again and start clicking off really fast times and catch somebody late. So I wouldn't even put it past him that if he's 15 seconds down on Roxon with 10 minutes to go, that he might still catch him. But like I said, I would put Roxon ahead of Musquin now to outlast Tomac in a 30-minute moto and maybe get that first win of the season tucked away from him, because it just looks like Musquin's a little bit off. And then obviously we unfortunately lost Anderson to a compound fracture in his foot at an incident at Glen Helen, and I just think everybody else speed-wise is just not there. Like, you can't really include the Weston Pikes. Maybe Baggett's getting there, but Baggett won Thunder Valley last year, and he did it convincingly, and he just didn't seem like himself most of the season after that. And Thunder Valley, he looked good, but he still wasn't quite the same Baggett we saw last year. So I have a tough time believing he's gonna come around and still be that force to be reckoned with going forward, but you never know. I mean, he's El Chupacabra for a reason. He kind of sneaks up and bites everybody when you least expect it, so maybe randomly at like Southwick or something, Baggett's going to be really good. But yeah, talking about the 250s now, moving into that a little bit. What a weird championship the 250s are having. Started off pretty normal. Looked like Osborne just was right back to where he had left off from Supercross, from Outdoors last year. He just was on rails at Hangtown, just kind of unbeatable. Like, he didn't get great starts. He got a good start in the second moto, but he didn't get the greatest in the first moto. Kind of rode through everybody, including Martin, and took the lead and kind of cruised out front while Martin got second both motos. And, you know, I think everybody expected it to be Osborne and J-Mart Outdoors this year. And then we go to Glen Helen and Plessinger, who went 3-3 at the opening round, right, or 3-4. I think it's 3-3. Kind of rocks everybody's world just out of nowhere, I felt, because I wouldn't exactly put Plessinger as like a Glen Helen guy. Glen Helen, if it gets rough and super nasty and huge ruts and whatever, like maybe I would put Plessinger on the Glen Helen radar, because he's, you know, the GNCC background, likes the deep ruts, likes the East Coast stuff particularly. But Glen Helen stayed pretty good most of the day. The ruts weren't that deep. It was a pretty fast track for the most part, and Plessinger just worked everybody. Like, you know, got a pretty good start the first moto and took the lead early and then stayed there. But the second moto didn't get the greatest start, had to work his way forward, and then eventually, you know, Amart, while leading, looked like he had a pretty good lead to work with, and Plessinger just caught right up to him, went right around him, and away he went. Like, it looked like the only person that might have been on his pace all day was Osborne, but Osborne didn't have the greatest start in the first moto. And then the second moto, he actually started with Plessinger, passed him, Plessinger passed him back, and then just took off. And that was like the weirdest thing to me, that like Osborne looked like he had hit a wall just like right in the middle of the moto, just couldn't figure it out. I just not sure what happened. And then late in the moto, caught fire again, closed in a little bit on second and third, which was J-Mart and was it Savachi? Was it literally J-Mart and A-Mart again? Maybe it was. My apologies for not remembering that. But then he crashed, kind of all by himself, just swapped in the whoops before the finish line and went down. So, I don't know, like, and he talked about how he had crashed early in the week and he had some issues going on with, I think it was his thumb. And then that thumb issue came up again at Lakewood because he had a fall, I believe, in practice. And it kind of re-aggravated the thumb issue, and going into the motos, it sounded like he wasn't quite 100%. So then the first moto happens. He looks like maybe he's a little bit off himself, not, you know, 100% there. And Savachi was actually comfortably kind of leading that second moto. It spent a little bit of time behind Justin Cooper, and Savachi, who had really not been a factor most of the start of the season, caught and passed Justin Cooper and then was pulling away from him, and what I heard was a spark plug issue, like spark plug dead, but kind of sounds like a convenient little way to skirt around a blown motor for a pro circuit. And he had 4 minutes or so to go in that first moto, and he had that thing won, and Savachi lost the engine, or lost the spark plug apparently, and Justin Cooper, kind of before I would have expected it, because I was just talking to my friends earlier in the day about it, and they're like, man, Cooper, fastest qualifier again, this guy's going to win a moto. And I agreed, but I was kind of like, I just don't think yet. Like, I just think that, you know, overall 35 minutes, speed-wise, fitness-wise, all that, he just hasn't had enough time to kind of figure it out with all these guys. And I don't think that that's necessarily the wrong statement still, because I think Savachi had that race won, and Cooper got a little lucky. But, you know, hey, sometimes luck is all it takes, and it starts, you know, kickstarts a fire in these guys, because Cooper won that first moto, his first of his career. Really well done. Really kind of a cool, calm, collected ride, because when you're a rookie like that and you get passed by a veteran who's, you know, going faster later in the race, there's a pretty good tendency that I've seen before for these rookie kids to just be like, oh man, I'm exhausted. You know, like, I just pushed my heart out for 20 minutes and these guys are still going faster than me. I can't do that anymore. And he did drop off a little bit, but he stayed within, you know, a couple seconds of Savatgy, and at some point it looked like he might have even had another run going after Savatgy. But you know, they had a plenty big enough gap to everybody behind them that it really wasn't gonna, it was gonna be a non-factor for them catching. And yeah, great win for Cooper. Nice way to kind of get the ball rolling for him, I would say. Second moto wasn't great for Cooper, but I would say that that's probably a little side effect of maybe being a tad winded from winning the first moto and kind of the emotions that goes into that, because he did start inside of the top 5 and drifted back to 8th. But still, like, you know, he's clearly, he's there. He just kind of needs to carry that momentum over, kind of keep his fitness level where it needs to be going into each moto, not wear himself out too much in one moto and lose it all for the next. But speed-wise, he looked great. Obviously, being fastest qualifier 2 weeks in a row is pretty dang impressive for a rookie, and I think, you know, it's only going to get better from him from here. Better for him from here. But yeah, that second moto was, it's going to be kind of the thing that's going to be talked about probably for the next 2 weeks, is Savatgy, after blowing his motor, in my opinion, but losing the spark plug, started 34th gate pick way outside, and of course, because he's starting with a bunch of non-factory machines, gets the jump on them, kind of out drags them up the hill, ends up about par with everybody else going into turn 1, and he did the same thing kind of in Glendale, if you remember, the Supercross, where he had a terrible gate pick, he's way outside, and he just kind of outbraked everybody and shut everybody that was on the inside off and then took the whole shot. I think he was maybe thinking the same thing could happen, but the thing about Thunder Valley is the way the gate situation, like the inside gates have a huge advantage anyway over the outside gates, so you have to really get a whole shot to get it from the outside. And he did get a pretty good jump, but he definitely came into the first corner probably, if not even with everybody, like maybe within a couple wheel lengths behind everybody. And with the push coming from the inside and it all kind of, you know, shifting wide into the first corner, Osborne got shoved just a little bit by Gage Scherer, who was on the inside of him. And the first person on the outside that's coming in kind of diagonal that Osborne's going to run into is, of course, Savatgy. So they kind of like collide. Osborne tumbles off the track. Savatgy had to have gone down because of the way they hit and the direction they went. But if he didn't, that's amazing. If he did, it's amazing that he got up and was within the top 20 within like a lap or two. Because there's like only 4 guys down in that first corner, so he would have come out of the first corner in, you know, at the best like 33rd, 32nd maybe, and he was in the top 20 within like a lap or two. So impressive that he made that happen that quickly. As for Osborne, though, it looked like it was over, like down on the ground in a heap, laying there, clearly clutching his arm. Got up, kind of started shaking his arm off a little bit, and one thing that I thought was weird was that there's a Rockstar Husky guy standing there, and he was kind of banging on Osborne's bike, like trying to get the bars back into shape, get the front wheels straightened out. The plastics on the front end of the bike were all jammed up. And I mean, like, I'm not going to make a big deal about it because, you know, it's a kind of a heroic ride that Osborne got back in the race. And he eventually finished 20th, so he got a point, which, you know, in the grand scheme of things might matter a ton later if it comes down to a couple points for the championship. But to my knowledge, I never knew that a mechanic, team member, anybody could work on or like do something to the motorcycle, whether it be just smashing bars trying to get it straightened out or actually spinning wrenches on it and doing something if they're not in the mechanics area, which they clearly were not. So I don't know. I like took me aback. Like when I saw that, I was kind of like, is that okay? You know, like, is it okay that this guy is beating on Osborne's bike trying to get it straightened out for him, and then Osborne hopped on the bike and did a little bit more beating on it himself to get it straightened out? But I don't know, it just kind of took me aback as like, like, for example, Jeffrey Hurlings was disqualified from a qualifying race. I think this is back like 2012, I want to say, 12 or 13, and MXGP has clearly different rules than AMA, I know. But he got disqualified from the race, not because of a mechanic or somebody on the side of the track or a team personnel on the side of the track helping him after he crashed out of the lead of a qualifying race, but his bike was caught in the fence and he was trying to get it unstuck, and the fans on the other side of the fence started like helping him, started like pushing the bike through to get it unstuck from the fence, like, and eventually got unstuck, and he got up, and I think he finished like 8th or something in the race, but he was disqualified from the race because he received outside help, which is kind of my point with this all, is that like I just never remember it being okay to actually, I've seen people, plenty of team personnel like standing there picking up the bike for the rider in the first corner, and handing them the bike, which I'm pretty sure is legal. But I just, like I said, once it comes to the point where they're actually doing something to the bike, whether it's smashing on it like he was, or spinning wrenches, or changing a front tire in turn 1, I don't know. It took me back. So, not to say that it's any less heroic that Osborne got up and he just barely beat Ramler Alves over the finish line. I was kind of tracking him late in the race to see, like, is he actually going to get a point? I mean, he was almost a whole lap down. Did eventually get lapped, but I mean, on the field, he was almost a whole lap down when he got going. Got to Alves on the very last lap of the race, and by 9/10 of a second finished 20th. So he came from, at one point, like 5 minutes to go, I remember looking, and he was like 20 points down, or 20 seconds down on Alves, and I'm like, there's no way, 5 minutes left, like even if he's clicking off his best laps of the race, he's going to get there in time. And lo and behold, got to him and just got him at the line. Pretty gnarly ride, and it kind of took my mind off of what was going on up front, which was actually a pretty cool battle between the brothers, the Martin bros, with Alex leading and Jeremy catching him, and they kind of ran the same pace for the first 10 minutes or so, and then Jeremy got him and kind of took off, and J-Mart taking over the points lead now. And this is kind of a lackluster day from Plessinger, following up his Glen Helen win, and J-Mart kind of took advantage of it, had a pretty good day at Colorado, took over the points lead, and kind of sets up for some interesting championship scenarios going forward, especially in the high point with Osborne now having a bad moto, but clearly already was going to lose the points lead anyway with Martin riding the way he was. And Osborne's still kind of hurt, so is he going to kind of rebound from this injury pretty quickly? Is he going to be able to rebound from that 20th place finish quickly, maybe notch a win or two here pretty quick and pull himself right back into championship contention? Or is it going to, you know, is this injury going to fester a little bit? Is it going to take him a little while to get going? I think those are all kind of questions that need to be answered when we get to high point. And fortunately for him, kind of like Roxton, he gets that week off to kind of recover. If his thumb is a little bit jacked up, he can kind of rest it, maybe even take a whole week off of riding, which can be super helpful for these guys, and just let it rest. Just no stress put on it or anything like that. So we'll have to see what goes on at high point. I'm of the belief that he's going to be fine, but sometimes these hand injuries, wrist injuries, and thumb injuries, they can all kind of fester a lot longer than you expect them to. And now suddenly it looks like J-Mart's in the driver's seat, and it's going to be Plessinger that's going to have to be the guy that answers if Osborne's truly hurt. So we'll see what happens at high point. Hope you guys will enjoy watching it then. I'm going to probably release this video actually, I'll probably release it. Oh yeah, I was talking about it at the beginning of the video. I'm releasing it Tuesday. What am I talking about? But yeah, thanks guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed listening to my thoughts and opinions, and I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions as well. Might not get back to them immediately. I'm a little busy this week, but we'll see. And hope you guys enjoyed watching Thunder Valley, and you can check out this track in the description below if you want to give it a try for yourself. But I'll see you guys in a couple weeks, I guess. I'm going to be uploading a lot of videos to the channel that were pre-recorded, so it's kind of my last official send-off that I'll be talking about, in the present moment. But yeah. Like I said, hope you guys enjoy Thunder Valley and all the fun stuff that's coming up in motocross the next couple weeks. But for Kellen here on Start Your Systems, I'll see you guys in the next one. So long for now.